Cliches are a bitch, aren't they?
Whoa, we're starting the episode like that. I mean, I suppose that's also a cliche.
Yes, but I suppose it was a bit much. Think of the children, why don't we?
Aha, another cliche. I see what you're doing. It's as plain as paper.
Yep, these cliches are a dime a dozen, aren't they?
Only time will tell.
I don't have a care in the world.
The writing's on the wall.
Haste makes waste, Donald.
Every cloud has a silver lining.
I'm head over heels in love. Ah, crap. The cliché-o-meter's readings are off the charts! Yeah, sorry. We mean they're really, really high. We've got to get those levels down before the thing blows. So let me bring out my tried and true device. I mean, my handy device. The cliche pesticide. If your writing is weighed down by too many cliches and overused idioms, just give the air around you a couple of spritzes and presto! All's well that ends.
God, we gotta use it quick! Spray the air, spray it!
Of course, Donald. And done!
Oh man, that could have been a disaster. That thing looked more ready to blow than... what things blow up again, David?
See, the cliches are gone. They've been absorbed into the air like, something that absorbs things. I honestly can't think of anything that's, well, appropriate anyway.
I can't either.
Try our new cliche pesticide. Guaranteed to remove cliches faster than an ostrich? Ostriches are pretty fast, I think. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, they're pretty fast.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show where no matter who you like more, I'm actually, empirically, the better host.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, it is. It's empirical.
I mean, you
can't
take
deny
this
that evidence.
You have to take this podcast way more seriously than I do, even though I'm the one paying for it and paying for the studio.
Hey, what can
editing
I say?
it.
I like to put my advice and take that seriously, because if I don't take it seriously, no one would, believe everything I have to say.
And if you don't laugh at life, then it's not a life worth living,
So that's why you don't take it seriously. You want to be laughed at, not
yes,
with.
and laughed with.
Okay.
I've been laughed at and with a lot. The ratio of which, you can figure out yourself, listeners.
Well, not just this podcast. You'd have to listen to his other one, too.
Listen to my show, Paleobites. If you're so high and mighty, why don't you start your own podcast?
I have, kind of. I haven't released it yet.
All right, that's it. The Ritwit is canceled. We each just have our own podcasts now. You've betrayed me.
Betrayed you. You started it.
Betrayed.
Thank you, Max Bialystock of the producers.
Just like Cain and Abel.
You pulled a sneak attack.
I thought that we were brothers.
And then you
stabbed me in the back.
All right, moving on. We're into a new set.
Like Samson. No, I'm sorry.
We're into a new set, listeners. Thanks for joining us after
Yes.
the Witties. This one's about something a little bit different. I do want to make a quick shout out to a friend of ours, Joel, for coming up with the idea for this set.
Yeah, that was his idea, so thank you. I was going to bring that up, too.
Yeah, really much appreciate that. But we managed to make 4 episodes out of it. So what's the other 3? Stay tuned.
That's just podcasting, man. That's just art, man. Except for Netflix, which putting all their shows all at once so you can binge watch.
Well, okay, they put like bits out. They don't put the whole thing up.
They
at
put
once,
a whole season up
movie.
at once. Yeah.
Well, like I've seen it where they'll literally release like half of the season so you can binge that all at once, and then give it a little bit of time to matriculate.
Matriculate, yes.
Not matriculate, percolate.
Sure.
Get yourself excited.
Titulate.
Neither of those are going to be vocab vitamin for this set, but that's not even this episode. What we'll do first is what we will rip off from this month. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I got a Nintendo Switch recently.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's one of the games I got for it was the classic from my childhood that I clocked many hours on back on the N64. I almost said P64 because I'm such a Sony guy.
Because they have totally 64 systems. They're only releasing the 5th one now. Come on.
Give them a couple hundred years.
Will you be alive by then? Probably not.
My head will be frozen like Disney. So.
Moving on, you said a game you played a lot on the N64. And
That
what
is
was that game?
Star Wars Episode 1 Racer.
Ah.
Based on what pretty much everyone agrees is the best part of the Phantom Menace, the pod racing scene.
It is a really good scene.
Like, good stuff. It really captures the sense of speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just zooming real fast, man. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how fast you're going. Just going so fast.
Yeah, but you're not going through this very fast.
Going so god dang fast, man. It keeps it interesting, even as it's going on, too, even without power-ups, like kart racers have.
Sure.
And you don't even really have that weapons, either. Sebulba, you can sort of use his flames to flame other people, other pod racers, but also kind of hurts yourself, too. So it's just when you want to be a real a-hole at the expense of your own.
There is definitely that.
But it's just like, the course is a lot of hazards and sharp turns, which at such high speeds can be quite difficult to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And banging on the walls too much damages your pod, which you'll have to slow down and repair. Or
This is why people behind you don't need weapons, because if you crash into a wall, they get to pass you anyway.
You can crash into a wall and just explode, and there's a cool animation for if you explode just one of your pods and you spin for a couple seconds, and then boom. It's like a space chariot, and now you got a cable car with two cables leading into engines rather than horses. So,
kind of looks like a motorcycle, honestly, if I remember that particular one.
Like
you're in a seat, you've got the handles here, and you got like two engine blocks in the front or whatever.
Right, but it's hovering because it's Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And the engines are jet engines.
I said it looks like. I didn't say it was.
It has no wheels.
I said it looks like. It didn't say it was.
It looks more like a tricycle, honestly. But one of those cool ones where the single tire is behind you rather than in front of you.
Sure.
Anyways, so once you reach a certain speed, though, you can overcharge the engines to give you a boost, which greatly increases your speed at the cost of handling and maneuverability. This also steadily increases the heat of your engines, though, and if you go too long, you'll eventually overheat and cause one of your pod engines to catch fire.
Just great. Halt and catch fire.
Yes, which means you'll have to repair and risk damaging your pod engine parts, meaning they'll be less effective in the next race, unless you've got a bunch of pit droids saved up, which cost a lot of money.
So you need to have a bunch of money first.
Basically. But eventually you'll get to the point where you'll master boosting until just before you overheat, and you become a pod racing master.
Ah, yes.
Or a podcasting master, as I originally wrote.
Yeah, because knowing how to boost just before your engines overheat has anything to do with podcasting.
It has
whatsoever.
stuff to do with writing, though.
Oh, well,
this is what I'll rip off.
In this nebulous life.
And that's what I'll rip off with them. Sometimes in writing, you just gotta go fast and power through it. But make sure you don't overdo and turn your work into a big exploding mess. Is that a stretch? Probably.
Most likely so.
Anyways, what have you writ? I've ripped off this old video game and just barely passed it on as writing. What have you done that
could become writing? I've been reading some long accepted classics.
Oh, you nerd.
Well, it's kind of a lucky coincidence. We're doing a lot of cleaning up the house, and I'm finding a bunch of these old books that I've never read before, and it's like, oh, I know they're really supposed to be good. Like Watership Down I read last year. I read Huckleberry Finn. I mentioned that on the Witties. I'm not mentioning Watership Down again, but there are a couple of ones I did not mention. So to get relevant to this month, in Huckleberry Finn, there's a sequence I absolutely do not want to rip off.
Oh.
Tom Sawyer, protag of the earlier book in that set, returns and excessively overcomplicates things while they try to spring the Negro slave Jim from captivity.
Oh, come on, Tom.
At one point, they literally have him free, but it's not good enough. Like, seriously, Tom?
Oh, details, please.
Do you really want them?
No, it's kind of confusing what you have worded there, but I guess you just have to read the book that we've all read in middle school before.
Well, I didn't have to read it in middle school. Obviously, I haven't read it before this, but essentially, Tom contrives of this grandiose plan to spring Jim free, and they have to introduce all of these difficulties. Huck says, why don't we just do it the simple way? Get him out, it's done. Tom's like, that's not good enough. We have to have all of these conditions met. And they had to create their own obstacles. The problem was there was one part in this where they needed Jim's help. So they get Jim out of the place he's being held to help them. He's literally free right there. And they put him back in and say, nope, you got to wait a while.
You know,
it's so dumb.
There are two types of creators. There's the technician, and there's the performer. Seems like Huck is the technician.
And Tom is very much the performer.
Yes.
Also, those of you who have read the entire book of Huckleberry Finn, there is a twist at the end that is actually quite delectable, but it almost feels like there are too many good things happening at once.
Too much good stuff.
Well, it almost seems like it's trying to it's like, okay, well, let's just put all the toys back into the box.
You're talking about the ending's a bit too saccharine or something, or?
No, I don't think it's too saccharine. Basically, they find out something that invalidates pretty much everything they did.
Oh,
and then there's a bunch of other things piled on top of that as well, which are good happenings, but it's almost too much. Anyway, the other book. Well, okay, never mind. I actually brought up a third one here. So one other book is called The Swiss Family Robinson.
Oh, I've seen the original movie.
By a Swiss author whose name I would likely bungle trying to pronounce, so I'll refrain from doing that here, sorry. I do like how the main character, the father of this family, is super capable, a la his favorite adventurers, and the authors, it's admitted, using quick wits and an expansive general knowledge of how things work to invent things on the fly that are necessary to the family's continued survival. And I'd love to rip off a character so skilled in myriad ways.
Well, what I liked about it, and I remember they talked about this, it doesn't really make a lot of paleontological sense, but they talk about how this island is unique and that it has so many different animals from so many different corners of the world that are just like ostriches and tigers, two animals that shouldn't be together.
True.
But they are.
To be fair, there may be some creative liberties taken in adapting it to movie form.
I remember when I saw this as a kid, I remember they explained it by this must have been like sort of a sort of bridging the gap sort of island that must have had connected to all of it before. I'm like, it wouldn't happen that recently, but I like the concept.
Well, it is a really fascinating
of a place with zebras and ostriches, but also
Asian
elephants.
A thing that they term kangaroos. I mean,
kangaroos, tigers, bears.
It's pretty crazy. A massive boa
Komodo
constrictor.
dragons, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, all the things that they see, which it's a really inventive book, and that's really nice, but I just don't know if it's realistic.
Well, I know, but that's fine. Like, there's survival stories
like,
unrealistic.
So far, I've seen one thing that the guy admits he's not good at. Now, I'm not done with his yet, by the way, but he's only found one thing. He's like, I am not too sure I can actually handle this, and he manages it anyway. It's just like, oh my God. Anyway. Another part of that book that I don't feel like ripping off, though, is their speech patterns. It's terribly stiff, which makes me wonder if the version I'm reading is abridged and maybe it's a translation. I honestly
if the original author's Swiss, that makes...
I mean, it's possible. I don't honestly know.
And it's called Swiss Family Robinson.
Right. Right. And they do make reference to the fact that they were the whole shipwreck that started this mess. They were on some cruise or something, and they were from Switzerland. It is acknowledged in the book.
Okay.
Anyway, I also really enjoyed reading the original version. I think it's the original version of A Christmas Carol by Dickens.
Ah.
I'm not sure if it was abridged. It was less than 100 pages, which kind of surprised me.
It's a short book.
Yeah.
And he wrote it in like 6 weeks.
And he probably released it in like installments, like he did with Tale of Two Cities.
I don't think so. I mean, I just recently saw a movie called The Man Who Invented Christmas. That's kind of like a biopic about Charles Darwin.
Charles Darkins.
Charles Dickens. They're all mid-1800s. Important folks. I don't know.
I'm sorry. The other combination that I haven't tried is Charles Dickwin. Oh boy. Moving on.
Anyways, Mr. Charlie Dickwin. It's just about his the 6 weeks for when he writes the book and how he comes up. It's not about like his life or anything. I mean, you see a little bit about his. It's an interesting movie.
I mean, maybe there's a way for me to include some introspection without the shenanigans of spirits or the auspice of the holiday season in a character down the line.
Right.
But that's what I'm planning to rip off somehow or other, because those three books, for various reasons, I did really enjoy.
They're good. I mean, they're all classics.
For a reason.
You know what's also a classic? Star Wars Episode 1 Racer.
Yeah.
You know what's also a classic?
Not this podcast yet. It's not that young.
No, I was going to say what's classic is rooting for the good guys. That's a classic storytelling thing. And speaking of which...
I thought you were going to make the comment that you had here, but you didn't. So, anyway.
Well, one is also classic. I'd forgotten about that comment. This is just such a classic.
And now you ruined your own segue. Good job.
It had to happen sometime. This is such a classic demonstration of our respective characters in this writing podcast. I'm ripping off some old video game while you're ripping off classic literature. Look how seriously we both take this. It's a wonder anyone roots for us, us heroes of this
and you're
podcast.
going to try another.
And speaking of which...
so as you can tell from the title, we're talking about rooting interests. Again, thank you, Joel, for the idea.
Yes.
Writers are sometimes guilty of the primrose path kind of storytelling, where it's entirely too obvious to the reader how they should feel about certain characters, right?
Yes.
Because we at the Ritwit are nothing except agents of literary chaos, we're going to take this chance to deconstruct how a writer can ensure the audience feels appropriately about your characters. But not just that. No, sir, or ma'am, or them. Sorry, try not to offend anyone. We'll start with a couple of can't-miss shots, though.
Yes.
Like...
Well, we're talking here first about you're rooting for the hero specifically.
Exactly.
So
aside from the first, which is a sympathy-inducing backstory, and second, a personality that's amenable to most readers, what are some other ways to make your protagonist worthy of someone's support?
Show the potential of their character, I think, is a good way to do it. Not show how great they are already, a la Mr. Robinson of Swiss fame.
For what it's worth, though, the entire word potential is loaded because it's not realized yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is the best way to say this. You want to show that there's room for growth, not that they've made that. Do you remember, Donald, when I kind of teed off on the perfect red, the guy who never got any better because he was already like the best?
Yes, wasn't that and like maintain the static quo?
Static quo because he didn't change. Yeah. So this is the antithesis of that. It's not having all of this happened already, such that there's nowhere else to go or get better. It's you show they have room to grow into. Without, telling the reader about it.
Well, they have room to grow, but they're also kind of on a good path. They're not just I guess there's stories about guys who are untapped potential but are just wasting their talents. They're brilliant but lazy, as the trope says. So, but I think it's cool to have characters that, you get to see, oh, this could be a person that could be something big, but we don't know how it's going to get to it yet. Just, just enough that you can see how much this person can be. That way when they do the big character beats later, it feels rewarding and satisfying, but not entirely unexpected.
Sure.
It doesn't feel like if you have a character that starts off like this absolute loser and then becomes this absolute badass, as if you don't do it right, it can feel very unearned.
Yeah.
It's wait, how did this happen? So
we will probably bring up a pretty good example of that later.
That's not to say it's some of the best stories have absolute losers becoming absolute badasses, but you got to show the steps.
But I mean, you have to show your work, and you have to prove that they have that capability without just putting them in that vaunted slot.
Right. But yeah, what about you?
Novel concept. They don't start out this way.
Yes.
And your dynamic writing of the character proves that they are worth rooting for. Hopefully the person makes little gestures to show their growth and natively encourage readers to pay more attention, even start caring about the character. What if they generally aren't redeemable, but you force them into a decision where they prove innate good qualities that readers can latch onto?
Right. Well, I get on to Rey all the time from Star Wars The Force Awakens, but a lot of people agree, and I can see this too, that she had a pretty good intro. That she's just
coming from basically nothing.
Coming from basically nothing, but she's also kind of a Star Wars fan. She has her own action figures. And she...
Living in the Millennium Falcon.
Living in the ruins of an AT-AT.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, she flies in the Falcon later. You're right.
Yeah, she flies in the Falcon later, so... she kind of, she naturally gets a lot of people to sympathize with her because she starts off with nothing, but she still clearly is aware of the world she's in, and like Star Wars fans are.
I think the best way to describe Rey, notwithstanding the eventual reveal of her true heritage, but...
that I didn't even realize until halfway through filming the final one.
There is that. Well, there was a bunch of rumors, and none of them ended up happening, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth mentioning that the idea of starting from extraordinarily humble, if not low,
beginnings, which is so relatable because most of us, try
Well,
as we might, aren't going to be famous, aren't
Well,
going to be
that's-
holding a lightsaber.
That's what happens to Luke, you know? I mean, but I bring up Rey specifically because the thing about Rey is that compared to Luke is that Rey is in a franchise that has lasted for a long time and already has these preconceived notions that people have of it. So to have a character who's like not only from nothing like Luke, but also is kind of interacting with familiar beats, like she's in an AT-AT, she's scrouges for scraps. She clearly is kind of a fanboy of the Jedi because she has the staff that she trains with. Like, it's that's unique compared to Luke in that she's like Star Wars fans. So,
and being relatable is a big thing.
Like-
Audiences like little more than seeing someone resembling themselves on the page, on the screen. So our flaws in a character and growing from those flaws is a very meaningful journey.
which was where the character of Rey falls apart, but I'm just talking about her intro. So
Well, and how many of us, when we're born into the world, growing up as a toddler, know for sure, without any doubt, that we're going to make it huge and be the next Bill Gates, be the
we
next
would all love to.
Ariana Grande, be the next
You know how many times I've been
Scarlett Johansson,
You know how many times I've fantasized.
Elliot Page.
You know how many times I've fantasized about there being a Megazoic movie and it just, even though it's an animated action movie, it's gonna somehow be a big box office hit.
I lost count about 10 years ago.
Oh, so many times.
And this is like multiple versions of Megazoic ago. So.
And it might happen. It
We
probably won't.
But that's the thing.
It's
There's nothing wrong with dreaming that it could happen, but the likelihood
You
of
just
us
gotta-
getting there.
you gotta get your expectations in check.
Yeah.
So
And obviously we are only flawed creatures.
mhm.
So all of us have our flaws to overcome, and some of us will overcome them, some of us won't. The next question, though, is how can you keep those beats, particularly the ones where you're like showcasing this, they have the growth potential, from being too predictable?
Right.
Obviously, we should root for the heroes because, well,
They're
they're the heroes.
Yeah.
But how can you show that rather than tell it, broadcast it, foreshadow it to heck, and then do exactly what everyone
Have a big
expects?
light up sign that says, "This character's the
This
hero.
is the moment.
This is the hero. Root for this guy."
I don't know what the best answer is, but I'm letting go. I have an idea, but I'll let Donald go first.
Have them do some act or convey some part of their introduction or early scenes that expresses the goodness of their character while also showing their potential for growth. Like, sort of like Aladdin, after he's taken all this effort to steal this loaf of bread, gives it up to some kids that are not as skilled with parkour as he is. So,
That is the darn truth.
so but don't just have other characters say you're a good person and not back it up. Like, give it to a point where other characters don't have to say it.
I'd argue if it's somebody who's not main on the screen that you can get away with this. But eventually the proof is in the pudding, not in what someone tells you.
It's like, in Captain America, the first one, that Dr. Erskine specifically chooses Steve Rogers because he is a good man. And he says that he is a good man. It's not just words, though. Like, he's done so many things that he wants to sign up for the army. I'll bring him up later. But basically, that's a movie or a story, I guess, in general, where they do say outright, "You're a good man."
But it's not only words, it is backed up
Yes.
on screen for the audience.
Taking the grenade, the fake grenade, trying to sign up for war when he absolutely would die so quickly. Probably not even from gunfire, from diseases.
Well, I mean, he was emaciated. Lisa.
Like, so,
Yeah.
But anyways, but yeah, so also give them a good motivation, one more personal than like, I have to save the world, something personal that they can like latch onto, like a family, like a job or something, like or a goal, a dream,
At the risk of oversimplifying, humanize them.
Yes. Regardless if they're humans or not,
Humanize them. What is it? The word anthropomorphism
Mm-hmm.
That you make things that aren't humans have human-esque qualities such that people kind of relate or at least try.
What if rats had feelings? What if cars
Ratatouille.
had feelings? What if
Pixar's answered a lot of these questions.
What if bugs had feelings? What if fish had feelings? And then finally with Inside Out, the classic joke,
What if feelings have
feelings?
Oh boy. As writers, we have tendencies,
Yes.
which is also true of your characters.
Yes.
But not all of those characters are bound to have the same tendencies as you or as each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
My be-all, end-all in establishing character traits is to find every possibility for a sample on page.
Right.
And pick one. Rather than just talking it out with someone. Unless you can see that trait in the conversation. I mean, that's different, I suppose, if it's banter and you can establish it while they're bantering, but like banter by itself is usually not sufficient.
No, as much as I love banter.
I do love banter. Just challenge yourself to not always set it up the same way, in the same general vicinity, at the same goddamn page number.
Right.
Telling isn't good, but maybe if the narrator explains this happening that encapsulates what you want readers to know, and that happened pre-narrative, that would probably be the only place that's acceptable in my thought process.
Yeah.
If you don't have a better alternative. If you can't make a scene where that trait is established in the narrative for the reader.
Well, and flashbacks can be, they can be kind of forced, so I don't know if that's...
Again, as I said, if you have no better alternative,
Yeah.
then that might be the only time telling them. But, I mean, that's not going to happen at a specific place. It's going to happen when it's necessary anyway.
Right.
So, is there room amongst the margins to tread new ground with a character and still make them quite obviously a good person?
Well, completely treading new ground is impossible.
As we always say.
What will we rip off from this month? Star Wars Racer and then classic literature.
You're just going to harp on that.
I'm really harping on myself.
Read more.
I do. And not only that, read good books. Not like the
Don't read dime store romance novels unless you really like them, in other words.
Well, I was going to say, not just like the manuals.
Don't just read smut.
The manuals of Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer. Like, press this button to boost. And I'm like, thank you.
Well, I mean,
this is good literature.
It is certainly literature of a different kind, but anyway. So yes, I mean,
but yeah, so
treading new ground.
It's impossible, but you can possibly tread ground that has not been tread on as much as other ground.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry that I could not travel both. I took the one
less traveled. Yes. Okay, so I'm at least sophisticated enough to get that reference. Okay.
I was going to sing the song, which would help me remember the actual lyric better, but I didn't.
I didn't even know it was a song. I thought it was a short story. But okay.
No, it's a poem by Robert Frost.
Oh,
however,
poem, yes.
However, it was treated by a composer and turned into a choral piece that I sang when I was in college.
Would.
So, anyways, moving on.
One thing you could do that could be interesting is come up with a bunch of less desirable traits for your character to have, and see if you could work with them to make them still a good person.
I'm just imagining you have this number, and it's like, okay, well, if I have 10 bad traits, okay, it worked. If I have 9 bad traits, okay, that definitely worked. And where's the balance?
Okay, so I'm gonna have this.
So this guy's gonna have like 12 bad things, and I'm still gonna try and make him a good character and see if the readers latch on.
This guy is an ugly, fat pervert. He leaves the toilet seat up. He makes the toilet paper go on the other side. He's a terrible singer.
I think the point that Donald's making here is that you have to get pretty granular with like the bad things if you have too many, but just broader brush things too. You can give him a couple of bad traits, but still strive to prove that there is goodness in the character.
Yes, exactly. Like, no one is perfect, and some people have more flaws than others, like way more flaws.
Yeah, the guy who can't figure out anything related to the toilet at all. I mean,
he eats Tic Tacs and even numbers. Only even numbers.
Wait, is that okay, whatever. I don't see that as
he
a
doesn't
flaw,
eat Tic Tacs
but-
at all. He doesn't.
I was going to say, Brad breath seems more like a flaw to me, but
He doesn't brush his teeth.
that is, yeah, okay. Anyway, so you trying to get up to 12 here?
Let's see, what else do I got?
Oh, my God.
He licks apples at the grocery store and then puts them back on the shelf.
He always forces his date to pay for the meal.
Yep. He doesn't tip well.
If we're going to stop, if we're not counting these, then we need to move on because you're going to be here all day. if you're
He
not gonna
gets on the fast lane and then just slows way the hell down.
in front of everybody
In
else.
front of everyone.
Obviously,
doesn't pay his
flaws,
taxes.
flaws themselves don't necessarily mean,
Mhm.
flaws don't equal bad. That's not how it works.
Right.
But obviously, what flaws you have, that's probably a little different, right?
Yeah, it depends on the flaws you have. Like, flaws don't make you a bad person. I mean, if your flaws, like, I'm a murderer.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty big demerit there.
And I have no motivation. I just like doing it.
I just like ending these things that people
I like
call lives.
squeezing the life out of someone. Like a snake. So,
We're getting a little too cavalier with our jokes
anyways,
about.
yeah, that's one way you can make it tread new ground. Like, how many flaws can I have and still make him a good person? Fun exercise, listeners.
Yeah, we're we're being a little too cavalier with our jokes about flaws here, especially those kinds of flaws. But another joke that we do all the time is that nothing truly original remains to be done. So far as like the margins of the assignment, it's more like it's already heavily annotated, highlighted across the thing, comments scrawled into every single nook and cranny, leaving no real margin untested. But that doesn't mean you couldn't find a less frequent means of showcasing a character's native positive aspects and utilize the crap out of that.
Yes, the road less traveled, as one would say.
Someone who's standoffish, making a sacrifice that seems out of place but is actually natural.
Right.
Revealing that while they don't actively engage in conversation with this person, they have paid enough attention to know some personal details because they do legitimately care. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's because I strive to see the good in all people that I say this, but hopefully it works for you.
Yeah, there's some people, though, but, we won't get into it. But.
I mean, I'm not saying it's easy to see the good in every person, but there theoretically exists good in everyone.
Yeah, there's
But theoretical. Let's move on to something
I was
that's
gonna
not
say,
theoretical.
bring up an example, but it's all political, so.
What are some examples of good characters you just can't help but root for? Either specific examples or different archetypes. And I can tell you this will be a classic representation of who we are on this show because I'm pretty sure I know how Donald's going to answer and I know how I'm going to answer.
I'm going to salute like this for Mr. America himself, Captain Rogers.
Oh, boy.
He started out as such a weak man who wanted to give the good fight and punch back against bullies who took on the weak. Even without the serum, he wanted to fight in the war. And with the serum, he can kick all kinds of ass in the name of America.
Speaking of, he apparently possesses America's ass, too.
Indeed. But, even in in the nation's darkest and most embarrassing moments, like in real world and in the Marvel world, Steve Rogers makes me feel patriotic.
Well, and I've always been confident that America is one of the greatest countries in the world to live in, and I'm grateful for the things that enables me to do on a regular basis. It's not the best in every aspect. It never will be. It never has been, and I'm not worried about admitting that. I'm still proud to be an American.
We are number one in the number of people who believe in angels, and that's basically it.
And number one in COVID cases. Let's not forget that.
I guess that's true. My apologies. But with this in mind, underdogs are characters that are easy for someone to root for, and Steve Rogers is an underdog. Even after he gets the serum, he
doesn't look like an underdog, but he still is.
Well, I mean, look at the rest of his team. You got a literal god. You got a man with all the armor that can do all the things.
Okay, Batman.
You've got... Actually, no, Hawkeye's the underdog. Now that
I was going to say, at least Cap has a serum. And all this super strength and whatever comes with that.
And Black Widow just has some guns and some moves.
And a real nice hairdo.
Real nice electrical shock thingies on her wrists.
And apparently espionage. Let's not forget the espionage.
She's got some real nice, those electrical things can knock people out, so she's got some real nice, knocker things.
Ironically, the forced joke you're making, usually it's the other end that's most notable. But anyway.
Why, thank you, Doctor.
I know what that reference was.
Anyway. So what about you? This is my silly example.
Well,
what's your serious example?
But yours was a specific...
I relate to Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey.
But,
I'm like,
but you were specific.
Yes.
Whereas I'm going to be dealing in archetypes because for as much as I consume, it's hard to remember too many standout individual names as much as things that I really, recognize patterns and like them. So I'm going to go ahead and say someone who picked himself up by the bootstraps and still made good despite a bad hand.
Right. Again, going to the underdog sort of thing. Sometimes underdog isn't necessarily your background, it's just your situation.
Mm-hmm. Champions of the others around them without prejudice or concern for what comes of them.
Mm-hmm.
Those characters who then never miss a chance to prove how much they care about someone.
Yes.
Particularly as that being one of my biggest personal values as well. That one really speaks to me. Leaders who are quick in surveying the options and are making arguably the best decision with positive outcomes, although it can backfire on them when, consequences enter the picture. It was the best decision for the time.
Right.
Children searching for family members with pure morals because they haven't been jaded by the world yet, and especially in the moment of their joyous reunion.
Ah, that's right. You love a good reunion scene.
Always makes me tear up. That was a different
You need
episode.
to see American Tail.
I have.
You need to see it again as an adult.
Anyway, someone who
it's on Netflix.
Someone who manages to be not only widely recognized as exceptional, but also personable with those they know well.
All of these, except for the children one, can apply to Mr. America himself.
But you notice that I'm doing archetypes rather than specific examples,
right.
which is very much in character for our rating podcast. However, with that kind of deconstruction of rooting for the heroes, which, that's the natural thing to do.
Right.
We'll be back with the one that's more also natural, but we'll do that next week because that's it for this week.
That is this week. We really heroically stood up to this challenge of telling people that we're better than them, and this is how they should write.
And hopefully they're rooting for us despite all of this.
And if you're not, we got an episode on that coming up.
But hey, if you are interested in the content and would like to help us produce more, I cannot recommend enough that you go and support us on patreon.com.
Yes.
To find that information, it is patreon.com/MatthewDonald.
Yes, it is my Patreon, yes. He gets some money from it too.
I do appreciate your contributions because it allows us to do content like this, helps us pay for the studio, which is a wonderful studio.
And the reason why he doesn't get half and half is because I also have most of my Paleobites content.
Well, that was the other thing is he also helps him bring him Paleobites to you too.
Yes.
So there's that. But huge thank you to all of our patrons so far.
Yes. And also, please, if you wouldn't mind, rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, wherever you come in to listen to us, a rating, a comment, get in touch with us if you'd like to do that. All of the feedback really does help. Speaking of, if you'd like to, the email address is mattd with 2 T's at MatthewDonaldCreator.com. It's spelled in the description, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail.
Right.
Hey, if you got episode ideas, we'd love to hear them.
Right.
If we can share your feedback with all the other listeners, please let us know.
Yes, that'd be great too. We have a whole segment on it.
Yes. And if you'd like to follow us personally, I'm working on memes.
You don't have a professional social media. Once you get your Nerds Are Us podcast going.
That's the thing.
Maybe.
That'll probably be the tipping point for me.
But as for me, you can follow me at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at Matthew Donald 64 on Twitter, and Matthew Donald 64 on Instagram. Why 64? Why do I not have a 64 thing here?
Because you forgot to
I forgot. There is no reason. It finally happened, listeners. There is no goddamn reason why it's 64.
We almost made it to 2 times that number of different various invalid reasons before he ran out of one. But apparently it's over. It's no more. We're not going to be able to do that joke anymore, are we?
Yes, we are. This is just a temporary setback. Why 64? Because that's how many shots it takes to knock me out. I've got an iron liver, like Captain America.
I was going to say, why 64? Because that's how many days I could have written this and forgot to do it.
That's true. That's how many chances I had to write this.
And you were on this document so much in the interim because I remember seeing you on it a bunch of times.
All right, hold on. I'm going to write the next one. So long, listeners. I'm Matt Donald.
I'm Matt David. Thanks for listening to the Two Twits twit ourselves out about reading. We'll be back next week with more, but until then, stay safe, healthy, keep washing your hands.
Keep writing, keep reading.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
The Read
Cliches are a bitch, aren't they?